Hey everybody, today I want to talk about the Persian Wars. This is the kind of one of the most exciting parts of Greek history, and this is what everyone kind of knows a lot about, or at least has heard about, the Greeks versus the Persians. So if you want to follow along, I think this is the Persian Wars PDF. But if you look at slides 2 and 3, you can basically see how the Greek Empire, or if you want to call it that, maybe you shouldn't call it empire, the Greek kind of movement, the colonization, they bump into the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire is huge. It's kind of the superpower of the day. Cyrus the Great, we talked about him in the first couple modules. You read about him. He creates the Persian Empire, and the Persian Empire is going to do battle with the Greeks. What are the causes of the Persian Wars? And the Persian Wars are basically the 490s to the 470s. That's the bread and butter of the Persian Wars. The Persians and the Greeks fight forever after that. I mean, there's always fighting or battles. The Romans end up fighting the Persians, but the main focus is basically the 490s. The big battles are in 480, and then 479 kind of things peter out. But the causes of the Persian Wars: Persia is expanding into the Mediterranean. It's probably only a matter of time before they bump heads with the Greeks. There's this group called the Ionians. They live in modern-day Turkey. They're cousins to the Greeks. They're conquered by the Persians, but then the Ionians revolt against the Persians. This Ionian revolt starts in 499. They basically revolt against their Persian overlords. Athens helps the Ionians revolt, and this kind of sparks the war because the Persians decide to come crush the Ionians, and then the Persians realize, hey, the Greeks, the Athenians are helping the Ionians, so we got to crush the Greeks now. So those are kind of the causes of the Persian War. Some of the reasons the Ionians rebelled is the Persians charged high taxes, and nobody likes being ruled by outsiders. So like I said, the Athenians helped the Ionians, so then the Persians crushed the Ionians, but then realized they have to fight the Athenians as well. The Persian provincial capital, Sardis, is burned down in 498 BC. Miletus is conquered by the Persians, and the Greeks are enslaved. So basically there's a lot of atrocities on both sides. Herodotus talks about how the burning of Sardis angered the Persians, and they figured out we need to go defeat the Greeks and kind of get revenge for this. Themistocles is this really important person in Athens. He starts thinking about the possibility of Persia invading the mainland of Greece, so he kind of gets the harbors of Piraeus fortified. King Darius, or King Darius, kind of heard it both ways, but King Darius sends an expedition against Greece in 492 BC. He conquers kind of northern areas of Greece. He sends another expedition in 490 BC through the Aegean. He sends emissaries basically saying, like, you need to submit, and usually you would demand earth and water, like in a vase or a clay pot. That would kind of be a symbol of your city is going to submit to the Persians. Athens and Sparta will not submit to the Persians. So basically Athens and Sparta decide they're going to fight the Persians. In 490 there's this battle, the Battle of Marathon. Basically the Persians are defeated by the Athenians. I have some pages listed here on slide 19. That's just readings from Herodotus. I had my students in another class when I taught face-to-face read the story, but I won't this time. The Athenians win at the Battle of Marathon. Basically, they got the center. If you look at slide 21, they retreated and the Persians followed the center, but then the Athenians had two wings that kind of enveloped the Persians. Phidippides ran to Athens to basically say, hey, we won. On slide 22 I got an animated battle map. If you kind of want to watch an animation of what the battle might have looked like, you can. So the Athenians are victorious. Basically, I don't know, the Battle of Marathon is kind of like one of the greatest victories in Greek history. King Darius plans another invasion. He wants to get revenge, but he dies, so his son Xerxes is going to be the king when most of this goes down. Supposedly, Xerxes said, "I will not rest until I have taken Athens and burned it to the ground." He gathers men from all over the empire. This might have been the largest army the ancient world had ever seen. Herodotus claims that there were 1 million Persians that invade Greece. That's probably not true from what I've read from other historians, but that's what Herodotus says. Herodotus talks about how his armies drink rivers dry and crush the land they march on. They cross the Hellespont on these boats. If you look at slide 30, basically there's a story in Herodotus, and this is why I like Herodotus. This story might not be true, but it's entertaining. So the Persians try to cross the Hellespont, and the first time it fails, the waves knock their boats over. So Xerxes has his men go out into the water and whip it with their whips. So basically, Herodotus might have been mocking Xerxes or warning the Greeks, like, you're about to be conquered by a guy who thinks he can control the weather. Do you really want to be, conquered by a guy that is that authoritarian? So maybe Herodotus was just trying to scare the Greeks, but it's kind of an interesting story. Xerxes goes and whips the waves so that they obey him and let him cross. Basically, you have two kind of big battles. The Spartans fight on land at Thermopylae, and the Athenians fight at sea. They fight the Battle of Salamis. Thermopylae comes first, and then Salamis comes second. So the Spartans defeat the Persians at Thermopylae. Well, actually, they defeat them for a couple of days, but then the Persians conquer the Spartans. The Spartans were just buying time for the Persians. Then later, the Athenians defeat them at Salamis. So I've kind of got some slides here showing you some maps of where the fighting is. Themistocles is kind of the hero of the Athenian side of the Persian Wars. Basically, he convinces his fellow Athenians to use the wealth from these silver mines to build a navy. He convinces the Athenians to build these things called triremes. They're kind of like the missiles of the ancient world. On slide 38 and 39, I got pictures of them in a short video if you want to watch kind of how triremes would fight. But basically, you would have oarsmen in these triremes, and they would ram other ships. So basically, Athens and Sparta team up. Leonidas is the Spartan king who is going to fight the Persians at Thermopylae. Both the Athenians and the Spartans send emissaries to the oracle at Delphi. The oracle tells the Spartans, men of Sparta, either your glorious city will be taken by the sons of Persia, or all Sparta must mourn for the loss of a king as an exchange. So if the Spartans are going to win, it's going to be because a king dies. The Athenians also go to the oracle at Delphi, and basically the oracle says, the wooden walls will protect you, Athens. So what ends up happening is the Athenian emissaries go home to Athens and they say, hey, the oracle told us that the wooden walls will protect us. Well, then Athens starts debating, what are the wooden walls? Some people argue that it's the high point of the city, the Acropolis, because it used to have wooden walls around it. So they say, the oracle wants us to make a last defense of our city, fight the Persians in our own city. Themistocles says, no, the oracle that said the wooden walls will protect you, she really meant our Athenian navy of triremes will protect us. So Themistocles wins the argument, and the Athenians abandon Athens, and they basically say, we're going to fight the Persians on the seas. So that's what ends up happening. Okay, the Spartans, they fight in these phalanx formations. They fight, they're hoplite soldiers. I talked earlier about how the hoplite soldier was basically the backbone of the Greek army. They would have this hoplon shield. They would have a Corinthian helmet. If you look at slide 45, I've got some kind of information about the fighting materials. They would have armor that would kind of fit their body. They would have something called the dory. It was this long spear with a counterweight on the back so you could balance it when you're in that phalanx formation. They would have short swords called ziphos. They would use them in close quarters. So usually you use your dory to fight distances, but then kind of once fighting gets up close, you would pull out your secondary weapon. There's basically 3 days of fighting at Thermopylae. Lots of battle pulses. The Spartans get in this little narrow pass, so the Persian numbers can't overwhelm them. It's kind of like a bottleneck. The Persians have to feed their massive army into these little spaces. The Persians can't sail around because there's also a naval battle going on. So I got some maps that kind of show you that. So basically, day 1 and 2, the Persians are defeated by the Spartans. Day 3 is when the Persians defeat the Spartans. They basically find a pass that sneaks around the back of the Spartans, so they end up fighting. So 300 Spartans and 1,000 Thespians stay that last day. They fight against the Spartans. King Leonidas is killed. The Persians sneak into Athens and they burn Athens to the ground. This is important to remember because later on the Persians are going to get one of their cities burned down in retaliation. But Athens burns. After Athens burns, and the Battle of Thermopylae, you have the Battle of Salamis. This is where Themistocles defeats the Persian naval forces. Basically, through some trickery, he gets the Persians to come into this narrow pass, the the Straits of Salamis. It's a trap. The Athenians defeat the Persians. You have the Battle of Plataea in 479 BC. This is kind of the last big battle of the Persian Wars. The Persians are defeated, and the Greeks are victorious. So what does all this mean? If you look at slide 72, the Greeks will not be ruled by a monarch, by the Persians. Greek political forms such as democracy will continue on, get handed down to the West. Philosophy, Greeks' intellectual achievements will get handed down. If the Persians had conquered the Greeks, we might be different today because of that. The Greeks start to talk about freedom meaning freedom from outside rule. Athens comes out of the Persian Wars pretty powerful. They have the largest fleet in the Mediterranean, so Athens has naval supremacy. And Athens formed something called the Delian League. This is probably the most important thing to remember. The Delian League is going to help lead to the Greek Civil War, the Peloponnesian War later on. But the Delian League is just an alliance of Greek city-states led by Athens that is going to protect against future Persian wars. So if you look at slide 73, you can see how Athens basically forms an alliance with lots of Greek city-states in case the Persians ever attack again. Okay, so that's really quick, the Persian Wars. I just kind of want to get you general information. I'll post a documentary if you want to watch a whole bunch about it. There's some really cool stuff out there about the Persian Wars, but after the Persian Wars, the next big war is the Peloponnesian War. That's the Greek Civil War, Athens versus Sparta. So that's where we'll pick it up next time.